Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gum Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Sam Saraswati Namaha. Om Shri Chinmaya Satgurave Namaha. Jayatu Jayatu Deva Chinmayananda Rupaha Sakala Bhuvi Jananam Atmadipa Prakashaha Jayatu Jayatu Sakshad Dakshina Murti Tattva Prakatita Paramatma Tirtharaja Prayagaha. Namasabhaye Sabhapadibhyascha Pujya Gurudev Padapankajayoho Sashtanga Pranamanjalaya. Spirituality has become a common word discussed in modern drawing rooms. People often say, I am not religious, I am a spiritual person. What does it mean to be spiritual? The question appears simple, yet the answer shapes how one lives, relates to others, faces situations of life like joy and sufferings, and ultimately understands the purpose of human existence. Across history, civilizations have returned to this question, offering answers that differ in their assumptions, methods, and goals. In the contemporary context, however, there is a noticeable crisis in understanding spirituality. It is often reduced either to ritualistic religion, devoid of inner transformation, or to a vague individualistic pursuit of well-being disconnected from disciplined inquiry. This fragmentation has led to confusion regarding its true purpose, where spirituality is seen as either impractical idealism or mere emotional comfort. Swami Chinmayananda stands at a critical juncture in addressing this crisis. A product of modern world, university educated, intellectually versatile, and conversant with Western thought, Chinmayananda turned to India's ancient spiritual tradition and re-articulated Vedanta, not as abstract philosophy, but as dynamic and spiritual way of life. And emerged was not a retreat into tradition, but a rigorous and relevant reinterpretation of the modern age. Chinmayananda reasserts spirituality as a systematic and experiential science of inner growth, rooted in clarity of thought, self-discipline, and consistent practice. As Swamiji emphasizes, spiritual life is not a retreat from action, but an intelligent way of living in action, indicating that spirituality is the integration of thought, emotion, and action aligned to a higher vision. Given its universality, spirituality has been interpreted in diverse ways across cultures and philosophical traditions. Through metaphysical inquiry, ethical reflection, devotional experience, and psychological analysis. Let us examine these perspectives, moving from Western and Indian understandings to Swami Chinmayananda's reinterpretation, and finally to how Swamiji's life and work embody an integrated vision of Bharatiya spirituality. Let us first discuss spirituality in the Western paradigm. Western philosophical traditions do not always employ the word spirituality in the same technical sense as the Indian traditions, but they have explored closely related themes the inner life, transcendence, and the relationship of the human person to something beyond the material world. A brief survey reveals both the richness and the characteristic limitations of these explorations. Plato speaks of rising from the sensory world to truth and goodness, while Plotinus describes reality flowing from the one, the ultimate source. Augustine of Hippo turns this inward. Our heart is restless until it rests in thee. And Thomas Aquinas unites reason and devotion in the path to God. Modern thinkers like Kant focus on moral duty and Hegel on unfolding consciousness. Contemporary Western discourses tends to collapse spirituality into inner peace, mindfulness, and the search for personal meaning, frequently detached from any metaphysical or doctrinal framework. The underlying orientation of Western spirituality is relational and ethical. It focuses on how the individual should relate to God, to meaning, and to normal existence. The question it represents is, what ought I to do and how ought I live? But the Indian tradition, as we shall see, addresses a different and prior question, who am I? In the Indian tradition, spirituality is Adhyatma Vidya, the science of the self, also called Atma Vidya or Anyukshiki. Acharya Kamantaka, in his Niti Shastra, defines spirituality as the inquiry into the cause of happiness and suffering through which one knows the true self and goes beyond joy and sorrow. It is the critical study of one's innermost core beyond physical and mental frame. The Bhagavad Gita says, Aksharam Brahma Paramam Swabhavo Adhyatma Muchyate. The unchanging is Brahman and its self-identity, the inner I-ness, is Adhyatma. Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya explains Adhyatma in his Bhashya as an inward journey that ends in Brahman as one's true self. The Gita further calls it the highest knowledge, Adhyatma Vidya Vidyanam, because it leads to liberation, Parama Purushartha, the ultimate goal of life. The Indian paradigm thus inverts the Western framing. It does not begin with ethics or relationships, but with ontology, the question of who or what the self truly is. From this Adhyatmikata, all ethics, devotion, and science of life flow. Universal spirituality, the Chinmayananda paradigm. Swami Chinmayananda redefines spirituality as the rediscovery of the inherent divinity of life. For him, spirituality was not a withdrawal from the world, but the refinement of living itself, a disciplined process through which the human being awakens to his true identity. It includes dynamic engagement, ethical living, and the transformation of ordinary consciousness. The philosophical basis of this redefinition is Advaita Vedanta, as expounded in the tradition of Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya. The self, Atman, is not something to be acquired or constructed. It is ever present and ever free. Spiritual life, therefore, is not a journey towards something external, but a process of removing the misidentifications that veils what is already present. As Swami Chinmayananda consistently taught, we are essentially divine, but divinity in us is covered by a veil of thoughts. If divinity is the essential nature of human being, then every dimension of human life, work, relationships, devotion, inquiry, becomes a potential field of spiritual practice. What changes is not the activity, but the attitude brought to it. Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga are not three separate routes, but three interlocking dimensions of a single integrated spiritual life. Equally important is Chinmayananda's insistence that textual knowledge alone is insignificant or insufficient. He consistently opposed the reduction of Vedanta to mere intellectual exercise. Swamiji says, knowledge without devotion is dry philosophy. Devotion without knowledge is blind faith. Only when head and heart work together does spiritual life become complete. This idea defines the distinctive character of his synthesis. It refuses to privilege any single path and insists on integration of head, heart, and hand as the mark of mature spiritual life. Gurudev was the living Prayagaraj, confluence of grace. To understand Swami Chinmayananda, we must look at the spiritual lineage that shaped him. Like the sacred confluence of Prayagaraj, where the three holy rivers, Saraswati, Yamuna, and Ganga meet and becomes one powerful flow. Chattambi Swami, the Saraswati of Upasana. Sri Chattambi Swami represents the subtle stream of devotion and contemplation that shaped the early inner life of Swami Chinmayananda. As an infant, he had a few interactions with Chattambi Swami, which, though outwardly unremarkable, were regarded as spiritually significant and formed the foundation of Swamiji's life and vision. This influence is believed to have planted the seeds of bhakti, shraddha, and inner depth, later seen in the emphasis of Upasana Yoga as meditation and embodiment refinement. In this way, Chattambi Swami became the unseen Saraswati, forming the devotional foundation of Chinmayananda's spiritual vision. Swami Shivananda, the Yamuna of Karma Yoga. Swami Shivananda of Rishikesh, under whom Swami Chinmayananda took sannyasa diksha, embodied Karma Yoga in its complete sense. His famous teaching, serve, love, give, purify, meditate and realize, turned Vedanta into daily practice. At the Divine Life Society, Chinmayananda saw spirituality as social, universal and service-based, where selfless service itself became worship. The vision later became the foundation of the Chinmaya mission. Swami Tapovanam, the Ganga of Jnana. Swami Tapovanam of Uttarakashi gave Swami Chinmayananda his decisive training in classical Advaita Vedanta. A realized master of the Himalayan tradition, he stood for a strict text-based and realization-oriented study of Vedanta. Under him, Swami Chinmayananda deeply studied the Upanishads and other scriptures with precision and clarity. This gave his teaching strong philosophical depth and scriptural authenticity, the confluence. Just as Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati meet at Prayagraj, the three streams of devotion, service, and knowledge meet in Swami Chinmayananda himself, the true point of confluence. From this Sangam flows his teaching and his work, integrating spirituality of sadhana, swadhyaya, and seva. Gurudev is the living Sangam where the three classical paths, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Upasana Yoga, merges into one seamless way of life. In the next section, we will briefly look at each path and how they come together in this integrated spirituality. First, let us look at Karma Yoga, the path of selfless action as explained by Swami Chinmayananda. To begin with, when he speaks of Karma Yoga as a discipline of inner transformation, he makes it very clear that this is not just doing duties, it is a way of life. As Swamiji says, Karma Yoga is a way of life and have to live it if we want to come under its grace. And in this, key emphasis is attitude. He explains, right action performed with the right attitude becomes a process of inner evolution. So the real change is not outside what we do, but inside in how we do it. Chinmayananda says, our efficiency, stress and confusion is because of our scattered mind. We have too many desires and thoughts pulling us in different directions, and they cancel each other out. He calls this the self-cancellation of thoughts. So that's the solution is not suppression but focus. The mind must become like a lens, clear and focused. A lens does not create energy, it simply focuses it. Similarly, when we drop ego and distractions, our existence energy becomes powerful and effective. Gurudev says, Karma Yoga is also living in the present, devoid of regret of the past, excitement of the present, and anxieties of the future. At the heart, Gurudev's vision of Karma Yoga is what he calls Yajna Bhavana, the spirit of offering. Gurudev explains Yajna Bhavana in his Gita commentary. Yajna is self-sacrificing work, undertaken in a spirit of self-dedication for the welfare of all. It is that self-liberating, social, communal, national and personal activity into which an individual is ready to commit entirely in a spirit of service and dedication. This Yajna Bhavana is the heart of Karma Yoga. So, life is not about just taking and taking, it is about giving and giving. Every action at home, at work, in society can become a worship. And this has a deeper inner impact. Ego reduces, attachment drops, and mind becomes pure and peaceful. He takes ancient ideas like detachment, selfless action, and yajna and explains them in terms of focus, efficiency, and emotional balance. Thus, he directly addresses modern problems like stress, distraction, and confusion through right spiritual life. So, in his vision, Karma Yoga is not about escaping life. It is about mastering life. A way to act with clarity, live with purpose, serve selflessly, and grow steadily towards inner freedom. This is spiritual evolution. Now let us look at Upasana Yoga. Upasana is not mere idol worship. It is transformation from attachment to devotion, from devotion to meditation, and to the realization of the self. It is the path of the heart and the mind working together. Bhakti is the path of the heart of pure love, and Dhyana is the path of disciplined mind. Heroes, rise in love, expand, embrace the entire creation in a joyous vision of oneness. This love grows in stages, initially in Dvaita, devotee and God, separate. Devotion is the link between the devotee and the beloved. Surrender, seva, each act of selfless service becomes an act of worship. The sacred and the secular begin to dissolve into one. Then the devotee ascends to the next stage, Vishishta Advaita. The world is no longer an obstacle to the divine, it is its very expression. Slowly, this love matures further. The boundary dissolves completely. This is Advaita. The devotee and the divine, no longer two, but the expression of one truth. And Bhakti is the universal love and Atmanishtata, abidance in the self. To achieve this abidance, meditation is the technique. Swami Chinmayananda says, meditation is the process by which the mind is stopped, the intellect transcended, the ego crushed, the chitta liquidated. To silence the mind and to reach a state wherein we experience an infinite self-expansion is the cherished destination, the rewarding goal, the true spirituality. When the thoughts have thus been nourished by study of Shastra and rendered quiet and peaceful by japa, to rest the hushed mind in the altar of the self in a thrilled mood of choiceless contemplation is meditation, dhyana, according to Pujya Gurudev. He taught dhyana as a three-stage of inner science: self-control, purity of mind, and abidance in Supreme. First, self-control. Meditation cannot happen in an undisciplined mind. The outer life must be regulated first. The senses, reaction, the pull of impulses. Gurudev says, to experience half an hour of quiet, peaceful meditation, 23 and a half hours of alert and vigilant living is required. Second, purity of mind. Fill the mind with elevated thoughts. Train it to move from scattered to focused through japa. He says, japa compels the ever-dancing race of the mind to behave in order and rhythm, producing a single melody of mantra chanting. And here, bhakti and dhyana meet. Japa is at once devotional and meditational, purifying the heart and the mind simultaneously. Third, meditation is the realization of purnata, abidance in self. Meditation is the art of silencing the mind so that the seeker may experience the fullness of the self deep within. Not emptiness, not absence, but purnata, the self resting in itself. And this is what Chinmayananda always insisted. Bhakti without dhyana, emotionally powerful but unreflective. Dhyana without bhakti, technically accomplished but spiritually dry. Together, when the heart is full of love and the mind is steady in silence, the seeker discovers the self in its fullness. This is upasana. Love surrendered, silence ripened, mind ever abiding in the true form of spiritual elevation. Now comes the Jnana Yoga, the core of Chinmaya vision, the science of self-knowledge. For Gurudev, Jnana Yoga is not dry philosophy. It is a practical method to rediscover our true nature. As he clearly says, the self is not the body, nor the mind, nor the intellect, but the consciousness that illumines them all. So the goal is not to gain something new, but to remove misapprehensions caused by non-apprehension of the reality and recognize our true, real nature. Gurudev uses his BMI chart to show the problems and solution. He simplifies Vedanta beautifully, using the body-mind-intellect framework. We experience life through body, feel through the mind, and think through the intellect. But the real self is beyond all these three. It is the consciousness that illumines them. However, the problem is we wrongly identify with those instruments and suffer. Vedanta is the golden key to come out of misapprehensions by removing non-apprehension and to abide in the self. What is spirituality? Gurudev's message is in two simple words: detach and attach. Detach from ego, anxiety and selfishness, and attach to a higher purpose, to service and to the divine deep within. Now, how do we do this? Here comes the method of Jnana Yoga: Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasana. First is Shravana, systematic listening. Pujya Gurudev explains, Shravana is not mere hearing, but a deliberate attempt to understand the import of the scriptures. Second is mananam, deep reflection. Here we think, we question, and remove all doubts until the truth becomes clear. The third is nididhyasana, deep assimilation and abidance. Not mechanical meditation, but continuously living the truth that we have understood. As he says, it is not how much you have studied, but how much you have assimilated that determines your growth. So, the journey is from information to understanding, to transformation, and to abidance. This leads us to his most powerful emphasis, living the knowledge through inner transformation, not by mere intellectual gymnastics. There is a complete shift in identity from thinking I am the body or I am the mind to recognizing I am the witnessing consciousness. This is spirituality. And when this knowledge becomes firm, misidentification drops, just like darkness disappears when the sun rises. So in Chinmayananda's vision, Jnana Yoga is the art of rediscovering who we truly are and living that truth. Now, let us see the seamless synthesis, the integration of the three parts. Ramana Maharshi beautifully expressed this in Upadeshasara. Kristale manaswasthata kriya bhakti yoga bodhascha nishchitam. Action, devotion and knowledge are not separate, but all lead to the same inner stillness and self-realization. In the same spirit, Swami Chinmayananda lived and expounded this truth. He is the Prayagraj, the sacred confluence where karma, bhakti and jnana meet and flow as one. His teaching radiated Jnana Yoga, his work a tireless outpouring of karma yoga, and his inner life steeped in devotion and meditation. This is an integrated vision of self-unfoldment through spiritual life. And this is his message. Spirituality is not choosing one path, but living all three together in harmony as one purposeful life. The Mahaganga flows from his Prayagraj of Chinmayananda's integrated spirituality is Chinmaya Mission. Chinmaya Mission is the contribution of Chinmayananda to spirituality. The mission rests in three pillars: sadhana, personal practice; swadhyaya, scriptural study; and seva, selfless activities. Gurudev wanted each and every section of society to be blessed and guided by spiritual understanding. Through Balavihar, he brought value-based education to children, shaping character from the early years. Through Yuva Kendra, he engaged young adults, offering rigorous study, leadership, and service, showing that Vedanta can answer their deepest question. Through study groups and Devi groups, Swamiji made Vedanta accessible to householders and women, blending study, devotion, and community welfare. And through Sandipini Sadhanalayas, Swamiji trained future Acharyas in the Gurukulam spirit, ensuring the Guru Shishya tradition could continue globally without losing depth. Also, Gurudev's Yajna Bhavana manifested as different activities like rural development, running educational and health institutions and temples. Chinmaya Mission stands as the living proof of his vision that applied spirituality can transform individuals, families, and communities. By embodying these practices himself, Gurudev made Vedanta a lived reality, accessible to all seekers, irrespective of caste, creed, gender, and nationality. As we conclude, the contribution of Swami Chinmayananda to spirituality can be summed up in his own powerful vision: to take God from the altar and place him in the heart of each and every being is spirituality. This vision, alive as the core of Chinmaya Mission activities, not as a belief, but as a direction of life, from the individual to the family, to society, and to the nation, growing from where we are to the highest goal through self-transformation and service. It beautifully integrates all three paths: karma in service, upasana in devotion, and jnana in self-discovery. What makes Gurudev's contribution unique is not that he created something new, but that he made timeless wisdom come alive. He showed that spiritual life is not only for sannyasins, but for every person willing to think, reflect, and live consciously. In this conference itself, on spirituality, education, and patriotism, we see his vision come alive. Even though Gurudev's physical form is no longer with us, the Mahaganga he started still flows. This mission is the manifestation of Gurudev's spirituality. This very gathering is a testimony to that living flow. The river that began from Prayagraj of his life of knowledge, devotion, and action continues to reach hearts across the world, and that his legacy, not something to admire from a distance, but an invitation to live a fulfilling, complete spiritual life. Let me end with the beautiful verse composed by Pujya Guruji. Nirgune nischala nishta sagune sarasaratihi sangamo madhuraschayam deshike no mahatmani. Boliye Sri Sadgurunath Maharaj ki jai. Thank you. Hari Om.